Hi, I'm Claire Meshkat from Vivify STEM, and I'm so excited to be back with you for this conference. In this session on cultivating creativity in STEM, you will learn how creativity should relate to engineering design challenges, useful tools and activities to practice creative problem solving, and how to incorporate these lessons into your daily classroom routines so that your students are able to apply what they learn in the real world. Let's dive in. Creativity is at the crux of our future. Innovation, solving global problems, or just making everyday life easier all hinge on the ability of future generations to think beyond what is currently possible or outside current patterns. Education has taught us, and rightly so in many applications, that there is a strict process to coming up with the right answer. The problem is that when it comes to the art of problem solving, creativity is about there not being a single path or direct process in finding a solution. Creativity necessitates that our brains form new paths, new synapses, and improve upon the way things have always been. That doesn't mean, however, that creativity requires things to be completely open-ended. On the contrary, providing some constraints can spur more creativity. Let me prove it to you. Take a moment, and you may need to pause this video to write this down, but write down a list of 10 white things as quickly as you can. Go. Okay, now I will add a constraint. Now make a new list of 10 white things that are foods. Most people are able to easily come up with 10 white foods, even though that is more restrictive than naming just 10 white things. Our brain craves ways to associate, so if we can provide some sort of structure for our students' brains to organize thoughts as it generates ideas or relates to past experiences, the process becomes easier. To apply this concept, in STEM we are often focusing on engineering design challenges, and providing constraints for these challenges is one way to help foster creativity. When proposing a challenge, give them rules to follow that constrain the size or materials or timing of the design. For example, if you tell your students to build a roller coaster for a ping pong ball, you may get a variety of designs, but they will be without purpose and miss out on providing the challenge part of the challenge that helps their future creativity flourish. Instead, consider asking them to build a roller coaster that drops a ping pong ball into a cup, with the constraints of being made solely out of newspaper. They must include one turn, and at the bottom of the coaster it has to be at least a foot off of the ground. Now watch their brains work. My goal here is to change the way you may have been told to define creativity. Creativity is not the absence of structure. Creativity is the opening of the mind to have the ability to see and do beyond what has been done before. Let's switch gears now to the meat of this session. Your students are likely pros at engineering design challenges already. So how do we take their creative problem-solving abilities to the next level? That is, where there may not even be a defined challenge for them to solve. We want our students to leave our STEM programs with a toolbox full of experiential knowledge in solving problems, but also practical methods to solve problems that aren't already defined for them. That is what the real world is, right? I'm going to walk you through some of my favorite creative problem-solving tools that have helped my students. If you follow me on social media, you may have seen me post what I call STEM homework. These are critical thinking activities that I assign to my students as either something optional to do outside of school and report back on, or as quick activities to do at the beginning of class to get our brains warmed up. These activities are truly the heart of the brainstorming phase of the engineering design process and have made a world of a difference in my students' ability to truly think outside the box and improve the solutions they come up with in all of our engineering design challenges. The first tool is called Reinterpret. Say you drop a cookie crumb in between the keys of your computer keyboard. You decide to use a paper clip to bend into a hook and scoop it out before it gets stuck underneath the keys and you can't blow it out. Now, imagine you're in your car and you drop your phone in between the seats of the car. You may remember the paper clip and the keyboard and use a clothes hanger and some duct tape to safely retrieve your phone before it slides into the abyss under the seat. By changing the context, you've repurposed your idea to potentially create a new product. That is the goal of the Reinterpret tool. It trains your brain to practice assigning uses for things that are not immediately obvious. It makes connections with experiences that you've already had. Here's how the Reinterpret activity works. I want you to test it on yourself to see what you can come up with too. First, write down 3 random numbers between 1 and 18. Now write down one more random number between 1 and 7. Draw each shape that corresponds to each of the first 3 numbers that you wrote down. All shapes must touch, and assemble the shapes into an interesting, potentially useful object. Got it? Now I want you to write down the category that corresponds to the 4th number that you wrote down. Take your design and rethink it so that it fits into that category you choose. Don't redraw the design. Write down what your item is and what it does. Did you invent something new? You just reinterpreted a design and applied it to your problem or situation. The next tool is a fun one called debugging. Debugging is a word that computer programmers use to find and fix problems in their code. You can boost your creativity by debugging everyday items to find areas for improvement. Your list of grievances about an item do not need to be reasonable or make sense at all. They may just lead to the next valuable iteration of that item. By listing the disadvantages or annoyances you have with an item, you can come up with ways to improve it. Here is an example. This is a commonly used hog trap. There are various versions of this basic design, but the premise is that you put bait inside along the back and a hog will push through the door to get to the bait. The door will shut behind it and the hog is then trapped and can be removed from the property. If we were to debug this design, you could point out the following problems. It's a bulky trap that would be a pain to store when not in use. It only traps one hog at a time, which at the rate they reproduce is pretty much worthless. And hogs are smart and often can lift the door and exit the trap on their own. Often the people who set the trap would have to set alarms to wake up several times during the night to go check the trap and see if a hog was in it so that they could lock the door. What a pain! So, a team of wildlife biologists did this debugging exercise and decided to tackle all of these issues with the antiquated trap design. They came up with a solution that uses only a net and some stakes to trap a whole herd of hogs, where they are unable to escape and do not need to be checked on. You can see a picture here of the pig brig trap system. Hogs root underneath the netting and are unable to escape back out. A simple yet ingenious solution spurred on by a simple problem list found by debugging. Have your students practice debugging an item at school, like a desk, chair, or backpack. Have them make a list of all the problems that they see in that item. Remember, no solutions yet. Make sure they phrase things as problems. For example, saying, backpack straps are uncomfortable, instead of make backpack straps more comfortable. See the difference? After listing at least 10 problems, they can go back and generate some solutions. Some solutions may solve more than one problem, which is why we want to be careful not to write solutions during the initial part of debugging. What new design for your item can your students come up with? The next tool is called Ideation. If you focus on coming up with one really good idea, you may struggle to come up with any ideas at all. Dismissing silly or bad ideas causes you to miss out on the opportunity to use those as stepping stones for improved ideas. The more ideas you have, the better your good ideas will be. So for this tool, we practice by selecting one common item. This could be a paperclip, fork, magnet, rock, or something else simple. I then set a timer for 5 minutes and ask students to write down as many unusual uses they can think of for using that item during those 5 minutes. Try this out yourself. Usually your students can generate a few ideas fairly quickly before getting stuck. For struggling students, give them different scenarios and ask them how they would use that item in that scenario. Scenario examples could include on a beach vacation. How would you use this item on an airplane or in a restaurant? What about during a zombie apocalypse? Careful with this one because you'll get weapon answers usually. What about in detention? How would you use it during basketball practice or at a crowded theme park? What about while hiking in the mountains or at the zoo? Or how would you use it at a party with your friends? Remember that adding some constraints can actually increase creative thinking. Keep this in your back pocket when you have students who are stuck. Before giving them a nudge with a possible solution idea, give them a nudge by offering another constraint. Many innovations are just a combination of two items to improve upon their individual usefulness. Think of the spork or the jar of peanut butter and jelly that comes together, which I've never used, by the way. By using the merge tool, you can transform the ordinary into something extraordinarily useful. What other successful merges can you think of? How about the wheelchair or the Swiss Army knife? To practice using the merge tool, have your students write down 5 common items. This could be things around the classroom or anything else. For my list, I might choose a hammer, scissors, a pen, a hat, and a cup. Make sure they number their items 1 through 5. Now have each student pick a number between 1 and 5 and ask the person next to them for the item that corresponds to that number on their list. For example, I may ask you for your number 2 item. You would then tell me a clock. I'm assuming you would have written clock for number 2, right? Each student would then take that item and try to merge it with each item on their own list to see if they can come up with something useful. Let's see, I would have a clock hammer, clock scissors, clock pen, clock hat, or a clock cup. Thinking about these options, I might decide to go with a clock cup. What if I had a cup that I could set an alarm on to remind me to drink more water? Or that would remind me in 10 minutes to drink my coffee once it has cooled off a bit. There might be a new invention idea there. These tools are great, but you may be wondering how to instruct students to use them in settings other than bell ringers. Ask students to recall them anytime they are completing a design challenge and need help in the brainstorming phase. Tell them to reinterpret their materials or material assembly. Ideate how to use the materials other than the way that they were intended, or how they themselves had used them before. Ask them to debug the actual design of what they are building to come up with a better solution for their prototype. This is also helpful if you are showing a picture of something that you are challenging your students to make, but you don't want them to copy the picture, right? This always happens to my students when we design catapults. As I explain what a catapult is, they form this image of what their catapult design must look like based on the picture I'm showing, instead of just what components it must have, like a lever arm or base. So I ask them to debug the picture and make their own design that still includes the essential components that makes it operate or act like a catapult. I also remind my students of these tools when we are doing what I call Stage 3 STEM challenges. These are more open-ended design challenges that are usually long-term projects where students apply science and engineering concepts on a larger scale, where I expect every student team to have a completely different solution. For example, my students are this year competing in Invention Convention. These tools are perfect to use in Invention Convention to help them generate ideas for their project. Another Stage 3 STEM application is a colony competition. We've done this where students have to design and build a base for people to survive and thrive on the moon or Mars. These creativity tools can help them generate ideas for their base design or how to solve problems like providing food and water to the colonists based on the materials and technology possible there. A few tips as you begin to focus on bringing more intentional creativity into your classroom. Your students need to know that there are no bad ideas. While some ideas may be more immediately useful than others, seemingly bad ideas can lead to thinking of better ideas. Be intentional about telling your students to encourage all ideas within their groups and to leave all negative thoughts or comments at the door when they enter your classroom. Your classroom should be a creative, safe space. There was a story I heard once about a company that was seeking ideas for the next big thing from its employees. To incentivize this, management offered $10,000 to whoever submitted the best idea in the idea box. At the end of the month, they found that there were no ideas submitted. This was likely because no one thought they had an idea that was worth that value. For fear that someone might judge their ideas as silly in comparison to an idea worth that value, no one even tried. This is likely the beginning mindset that your students have when being asked to share their ideas. What this company did next is then offer $1 for every idea that was submitted. Every idea. The idea box was completely full within a day, and you can bet there were many great ideas submitted. Drive home to your students that every idea has value. It may not be of immediate value, but may provide the spark for increasing helpful ideas. Every idea matters. You may also choose to give your students specific roles when brainstorming as a way of both facilitating the discussion and encouraging everyone to participate. To do this, use the method of the 6 thinking hats that was created by one of the world's leading authorities in creative and conceptual thinking and the teaching of thinking as a skill, Dr. Edward de Bono. Without going into too much detail, the premise is that each student puts on a specific color hat that corresponds with their job description for that activity. These do not need to be physical hats. I use colored wristbands in my class, or you can use stickers or pieces of colored paper, as long as students remember what hats or what hat they are wearing. Here are the roles of each of the 6 thinking hats. White represents the information available and needed. White states the facts. Red is intuition and feelings. Yellow represents benefits and value. Black stands for caution, difficulties, and weaknesses. Green is the hat for alternatives and creative ideas. And blue is for managing the thinking process, or the facilitator. To use this technique when students are working in teams, assign each of them a hat or 2 hats if in the likely scenario that your groups have less than 6 team members. The blue hat student facilitates the discussion and they begin to brainstorm in a sequential order. One order can be as follows, although there is no true right or wrong order to go in. The white hat starts by presenting the facts of the problem, including what the challenge is and any constraints. The green hat then generates ideas on how the problem can be solved. These are solution ideas. Then the yellow hat evaluates the ideas by listing the benefits of each idea. The black hat then evaluates the ideas by listing the drawbacks or issues with each idea. This is like debugging. The red hat collects everyone's gut feelings about those ideas. Then the blue hat summarizes the discussion and helps everyone come to an agreement on the conclusions. This may mean facilitating a few more rounds of discussions as they narrow down or generate improved solution ideas. Have students rotate through which hats they wear so that everyone has an opportunity to generate, ideate, and debug ideas. I hope you have enjoyed learning about how to cultivate more creativity in your classroom. Using these simple tools, you can give your students the brainstorming boost needed to be the next generation of world changers. If you would like more STEM resources and tips, please connect with me via email and social media. See you then!